Good morning. Initially, I planned to deliver my speech in Chinese, but since, well, in the last minute, our secretary decided to switch the channel to English, I think I have to follow suit. Okay. So the first question is, why should we put marine emission control on the agenda? Well, in recent years, you have heard a lot of programs on controlling the emissions from motor vehicles, well, such as the ban on idling vehicles, electric vehicles, the schemes to provide incentive for the replacement, for early replacement of the old vehicles. So why marine vessels now? Well, some issues. Well, take a look at the map on the left. Unfortunately, Hong Kong has a very narrow water fairways. So that means to say the operation and the routes of the marine vessels are very close to the residential areas. Well, when visitors first come to Hong Kong and take a look at our container terminals, they will immediately say, "Wow, wow, why wow, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow." Okay, it's because our container terminals, unfortunately, are very close to the residential blocks. More importantly, Hong Kong, our port activities has kept growing in the past 2 decades, and associated with this growth in maritime activities is the growth in emissions as well. So, solutions. The first is we have implemented MAP-RNA6 requirements, and under which there is a list of requirements to control the emissions from the emissions of air pollution. The first is we put a cap. This MAP-RNA6 puts a cap on the fuel sulfur content. It is at present 4.5% and will be tightened to 3.5% next year. There are also some other requirements under the MAP-RNA6, well, such as the ban on the on-port incineration, and the new installations are not allowed to have ozone-depleting substances, something like that, and also the NOx emission standards for the new engines. The second is, it is a piece of legislation managed by the Marine Department. Well, under this legislation, the smoke emission from marine vessels are regulated. The Marine Department has trained up a team of spotters who will use Radovan charts to assess the smoke concentration. And if the smoke concentration and if the smoke emitted from marine vessels causes nuisance, that will be an offense. The third is vessel speed control. In fact, within the Victoria Harbour and to the east and to the west of our harbour, the marine vessels, are subject to speed control, with some exception, of course. Primarily, this vessel speed control is meant to regulate the marine traffic, but it also has the positive effect of reducing the overall energy consumption and overall emissions of air pollutions. So these three are to control the emissions directly from the marine vessels. We also have measures to control the emissions from the port machines as well. Well, this one is what we call the key cranes. Key cranes are at the piers along the shore side. This is what we call the gantry cranes. Well, in fact, in Hong Kong, now nearly 100% of our key cranes are now running on electricity. And more than half, or around 70% now, or around that figure, of our gantry cranes are running on electricity. In the past, they were operated on diesel, and you could normally see a puff of dark smoke coming out from the top of those diesel-driven gantry cranes, but now there is less. We also have some sort of mobile machines, or what we call non-road mobile machines, operating within the port areas. These machines are now running on ultra-low sulfur diesel. In Hong Kong, well, it's now 10 ppm sulfur diesel. That is the same quality as the diesel used by motor vehicles. Okay, and this is also meant to target the machines within port areas. We have, under the Air Pollution Control Ordinance, we have provisions to control the nuisance and the smoke emissions from the port machinery. And last, we, as our secretary has already mentioned, we have led by example by requiring all the government marine vessels, to use 10 ppm sulfur diesel. That is the same quality of the diesel used by motor vehicles. So we have mentioned that we have done a lot. It seems we have done a lot. It seems, just seems. So are we satisfied now? It's not. Well, the figures already tell why. Bunker emissions, the sulfur cap is 4.5%. But in fact, at present, the average sulfur content of the bunker fuel used by the ocean-going vessels is 2.8%. And for the marine light diesel used by our harbour craft, the normal sulfur content is below 0.5%, and sometimes it can be even lower. So that means to say, this sulfur content of the Marlboro 96 is in fact too lenient. It's not rigorous enough. And also, let's see what happens with our. This is at least, in fact, a summary or a short form of our emission inventory. In the past 2 decades, roughly 2 decades, the land-based emissions, that means the total emissions from our land-based sources, including the power plants, the motor vehicles, the factories, and the combustion or non-combustion sources, has dropped by roughly 50%. And for the yellow column about the marine emissions, in the past 2 decades, it has, in contrast, increased by roughly 50%. So that means to say, the relative contribution from the marine sector to our total emissions in Hong Kong has greatly increased. So we have to do more. It's an uphill job. Uphill. Yeah, Fairways Charter. That came our turning point at the beginning of this year. A word of thanks to those good guys, those shipping operators who, on a voluntary basis, paid the extra fuel cost out of their own wallet, switched to low sulfur fuel when they were at berth on a voluntary basis. And our primary assessment is that it seems, well, I should not use the word it seems, it's a primary assessment, but it's quite likely that during this period of the Fairways Charter, there was a slight improvement in air quality, despite the fact that we also recorded an increase in vessel arrivals. We are now doing more analysis and collecting more data from the ship liners, and try to build up a stronger relationship between the number of calls, the number of vessels who actually switch fuel, and the quality and time they switch fuel, and the resulted improvement in air quality. The second turning point is a policy address. Well, in the policy address in October this year, the chief executive unveiled 3 initiatives to control maritime emissions in Hong Kong. On the regional cooperation front, in the near term, we want to push forward the fuel switch at berth and try to make it a mandatory requirement within the Peripheral Delta waters. This is what we hope to be a near-term, a short-term plan. And in the longer term, we hope to join hands with our neighbors in Guangdong and Macau and Shenzhen to set up an emission control areas within the waters of the Peripheral Delta. And at home, in Hong Kong itself, we are exploring the scope to improve the quality of light diesel that is provided to our harbour craft. So, regional cooperation plan, some of our guests and civil exchange has mentioned up front. This quality cooperation plan also mentions a number of initiatives to control marine emissions, and some of which are very similar to, actually the same as those mentioned by our chief executive. First, which at berth. Okay. Let's skip this slide. Emission control area. Well, we can also skip it. Actually, we are now having 3 acres in the world, in North America, in the Baltic Sea, and in the North Sea. And the 4th one is going to come into operation roughly. We expect that it can come into operation in 2013, January, or in the Caribbean Sea. Well, for Hong Kong, since our stretch of waters, our geographical coverage is so small, if we are going to set up an acre, it just doesn't make any sense for us to set up an acre within the waters of Hong Kong alone. So what our target is, we must join hands with our neighbors to try to aim at setting up an acre in the Pearl River Delta waters. Quality of the light diesel at home. Well, at present, the marine light diesel in Hong Kong roughly has a sulfur cap of 0.5%, but bear in mind that this is not a legislative requirement, it's a nominal cap. But according to the lab results, the laboratory test results provided by the oil companies in Hong Kong is correct. So we are exploring the scope of trying to tighten this from 0.5% to 0.1%. Well, in the coming few months, we will approach the stakeholders, including vessel operators, the oil companies, and to see their views of how to take this forward. Well, apart from these 3 initiatives announced by our chief executive, we also have 2 more initiatives. The first one is also the non-road mobile machinery within the port areas. We are going to apply to implement a set of emission standards to these mobile machinery. That means to say, we hope to put a new requirement under which those machinery that is newly put on the market must comply a set of emission standards. We are now starting to draft the legislation, and we hope, if everything goes smoothly, this requirement will be brought into practice by the end of next year. The second one is onshore power supply. Skip this slide. We are also exploring the scope of installing the onshore power supply system in the new cruise terminal in Kai Tak Airport. We are now making reference to and sharing the experience from our partners and the port authorities in the United States and the EU, because they have already installed those stuffs in their terminals. We are making reference to that and sharing their experience and see whether we can bring this into practice, hopefully. So much has done, quite a lot of job has been done, and quite a number of new plans, but this is a big challenge ahead. We won't underestimate the effort required. It is because we have to take care of the different interests, priorities, views, and perspectives of different stakeholders. Well, as I call it, assisting our superiors to make policy, to make the policy decision, we must be very careful about the sentiments also and the views of the stakeholders. We know it is a battle, we know it is no easy task, but we must do it because it is a job, it's a battle for sustainability, for sustainable development, and it is also a battle for the next generation. So we hope you can support us. We need the support of the whole society. We hope we can join hands and all keep moving forward and work together to make our plans happen. Thank you very much.